Her phone rang. She looked at the screen. It was her daughter's number. She answered the way any mother answers that call, without thinking twice. And for the next 4 minutes, she believed she was listening to her 15-year-old daughter being kidnapped. The voice was right. The crying was right. Even the way she said mum was right. None of it was her daughter. And by the time anyone figured that out, this case had already ended up in front of the United States Senate. This is Scam Files. Follow the evidence. Her name is Jennifer DeStefano. She lives in Scottsdale, Arizona. And on the day this happened, her life looked completely ordinary. Her husband and her older daughter, Brianna, 15 years old, were away together on a ski trip. Her younger daughter was at dance practice. Jennifer was there too, sitting in a studio hallway, doing exactly what parents do during dance practice, waiting, scrolling her phone, half paying attention to the world around her. There was nothing about that afternoon that suggested anything was wrong. No warning, no strange message earlier in the day, no reason to be on alert. That detail matters, because everything that follows was designed to exploit exactly that, a completely normal moment. With zero preparation, turned into the worst 4 minutes of a mother's life in the time it takes to microwave a cup of coffee. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost let it go to voicemail. Instead, she picked up what came through the speaker was Brianna's voice, crying, sobbing, the kind of sobbing that doesn't sound performed. The kind that hits a parent's nervous system before their brain even processes any actual words. Jennifer would later describe it simply, her daughter in distress, asking for help. Then, within moments, a man's voice cut in, cold and controlled, taking over the call. He told Jennifer he had her daughter, and he wanted $1 million, or she would never see Brianna again. Jennifer would later tell lawmakers something that matters more than almost any other detail in this case. It wasn't just the voice that convinced her, it was the crying, the sobs. She said it sounded exactly like her daughter, down to the way she cried when she was scared. Not similar. Exact. Here's what makes that sentence terrifying. Once you understand what was actually happening on the other end of that call. There was no daughter on the line. There was no kidnapping. What Jennifer was hearing was a voice generated by artificial intelligence, built from audio of her real daughter, and used against her in real time. Let's stay inside the call for a moment, because the next few minutes are the part of this story most coverage skips past. The man on the phone didn't just make a demand and hang up. He negotiated. When Jennifer said she didn't have $1 million, he brought the number down. $50,000. He wanted her to get in a car and start moving, to keep her isolated and reacting instead of thinking. Every second he kept her on that call was a second she wasn't calling anyone else, wasn't checking anything, wasn't giving herself room to doubt what she was hearing. That is not improvisation. That's a script. Fear, then isolation, then a number designed to feel achievable instead of impossible. The voice was AI. The tactics were pure human manipulation, running on a very old playbook, just with a new weapon attached to it. Think about what that man on the phone actually needed from Jennifer in those 4 minutes. He didn't need her to believe forever. He only needed her to not stop and think for long enough to act. Every technique he used was aimed at exactly that window. The gap between hearing something terrifying and having enough time to question it. Keep her talking, keep her moving. Never let the call go quiet long enough for a different thought to enter. Give her a number that feels like something she could actually gather, not an impossible fantasy amount that would make her freeze instead of act. None of that required artificial intelligence. People have been running that exact structure on telephones for decades, targeting grandparents with fake grandson in jail calls, targeting families with fake accident reports. What changed is the one piece of the call that used to be the built-in lie detector. The voice had just been neutralized. While all of this was happening, Jennifer was still standing in that dance studio hallway. And this is where the story turns, because she wasn't alone. Other parents in that hallway noticed something was wrong. One of them started calling 911 on a separate phone. Another one reached out to Jennifer's husband directly. Within a few minutes, and in a call like this, minutes feel like hours, they were able to confirm something simple and enormous. Brianna was fine. She was on the ski trip. She had never been kidnapped. She had never called her mother at all. The version of her voice on that phone had been built without her knowing it happened. So here's the question this case forces you to sit with. How do you fake a voice that exact, not close, not similar? Exact enough that a mother who has heard her daughter cry 1,000 times couldn't tell the difference? The answer is disturbingly simple, and it's the part of this story that should worry you more than the ransom call itself. According to research published around this same period, cloning a voice convincingly no longer requires hours of recordings, a studio, or specialized access to someone's phone calls. Some tools can produce a usable clone from as little as 3 seconds of audio. 3 seconds. And that audio doesn't have to come from anything private. A voicemail greeting, a video posted online, a voice note sent in a group chat. A few seconds of someone talking in the background of a video that has nothing to do with them. The entire process, from finding a clip of someone's voice to generating a convincing fake, can now take under 30 minutes with tools that are, in many cases, publicly available. Not classified, not underground, publicly available, which means the security question was never really how did they get my daughter's voice? The real question is, how much of anyone's voice is already sitting online, completely unprotected, waiting to be pulled into a system that was never designed to ask permission? Zoom out from Jennifer's case for a second, because this isn't an isolated incident sitting alone in a news archive. Fraud monitoring reports have tracked a sharp rise in exactly this kind of impersonation scam since voice cloning tools became cheap and widely available. Some put the year-over-year increase in AI voice scams above 1,000%. That number sounds almost unbelievable until you remember what it actually takes to run one of these calls. Now, no special equipment, no technical training. Just a few seconds of audio and a script copied from the same playbook criminals have used since before AI existed. The technology didn't invent the scam. It removed the one obstacle that used to make the scam hard to pull off at scale. Jennifer DeStefano didn't just live through this and move on. She testified in front of the Senate Judiciary Committee, telling lawmakers exactly what happened to her, in detail, on the record. Not because she wanted attention, because she understood something most people only realize after it's too late. This wasn't a one-time glitch in the system. It was a demonstration of a method. And methods get repeated. Since her case became public, similar calls have targeted other families, and not all of them ended the way Jennifer's did. In a separate, unrelated case, reported around the same period, an 89-year-old woman received a call built on the exact same structure. A familiar voice in distress, a manufactured emergency, a narrow window to act before she had time to think it through. She didn't have a hallway full of other parents to help her check the story. She followed the instructions on the call and handed over $14,000 in cash to someone she believed was helping her grandson. Different voice, different amount, different outcome, same architecture, built and reused because it works. That's the pattern investigators want you to see. Not a scary story that happened to one family in Arizona. A method reusable, cheap, and getting easier to deploy every year. The technology improves, and the targets aren't random. These calls tend to arrive at moments when a family is already slightly scattered, someone traveling, someone at an activity away from the rest of the household, a normal gap in communication that would otherwise mean nothing. A ski trip, a dance class, a business trip. Scammers don't need to know your exact schedule to exploit this. They just need to call enough people that, statistically, some of them will be in exactly that kind of gap when the phone rings, with no easy way to check the story in the first 30 seconds. So let's follow the evidence all the way through, because the most important part of this case isn't the ransom demand, it's the timeline. A phone call comes in from an unknown number. A voice that sounds unmistakably like a loved one. Immediate emotional information, crying, fear, distress, arriving before any factual information does. A second voice introducing a threat and a number. Pressure to act physically, immediately, before verification, is possible. And only then, if the target manages to create even a few minutes of space, a chance for outside information to break the illusion. In Jennifer's case, that space came from other people in the room, not from her. From bystanders who weren't emotionally inside the call, who could think clearly enough to start making calls of their own. That detail is not a footnote. It might be the single most useful piece of evidence in this entire case. The manipulation depends on isolating one person inside a moment of pure panic. It falls apart the instant a second, calmer channel of information opens up a text to the person who's supposedly in danger. A call to someone else who was with them. Anything that exists outside the phone call itself. The voice being real is not evidence that the emergency is real. Those are two completely different claims, and this entire scam depends on you treating them as if they're the same thing. This is where the story stops being about one phone call and starts being about a decision every family is going to have to make sooner or later, whether they realize it yet or not. Some households, after cases like this one made headlines, started adopting something simple, a word or phrase agreed on in advance, that only the real family would know, not written down anywhere searchable. Not something that would show up in a social media post. Not a defense against every kind of fraud, but a defense against exactly this one, because it targets the one thing, a cloned voice. No matter how good it sounds, still cannot fake. Information it was never given in the first place. Jennifer DeStefano got her daughter back in the only sense that matters. Brianna was never gone. But Jennifer didn't get back the 4 minutes where she believed, completely and physically, that her child's life was in danger. Nobody gives those minutes back. That's the actual cost of this kind of scam, and it's a cost that doesn't show up in any dollar amount, paid or avoided. What changed, permanently, is what a phone call can no longer prove on its own. For most of history, hearing someone's voice was as close to certainty as a phone could offer you. That is no longer true, and it is not going to become true again. The voice matching is not going away. If anything, it gets cheaper and faster every year, which means the only real defense left is the one thing a cloned voice still can't fake. Information that lives somewhere else. A phrase only your family would know. A second person to call before you act. A habit of pausing, even inside panic, long enough to ask one more question before the money moves. Jennifer DeStefano's case didn't end with a lost fortune. It ended with a warning that made it all the way to the United States Senate. Because 4 minutes of her life proved something the rest of us haven't fully accepted yet. The scariest calls of the future won't sound like scams. They'll sound exactly like the people we love. And that is the piece of this case worth sitting with longer than any of the numbers, not the $1 million demand. Not the $50,000 negotiation. Not even the $14,000 that a different family actually lost. It's the fact that the single tool humans have relied on for over a century to instantly verify a loved one on the other end of a phone call has quietly stopped being reliable. And most people found out the same way you probably just did, by watching it happen to someone else first. Follow the evidence. We'll see you in the next case.